I'm Natasha Gaskin-Peters. I have a PhD in economics and I'm a senior business specialist at the Center for Local Business Development, where I regularly teach the oil and gas industry course. Our last session featured an overview of the development phase, the second stage within the project life cycle. Now we will cover the next stage in the offshore project life cycle, that is, production. Production lasts from 15 to 30 years. It is the longest phase in the project timeline. Recall that the exploration lasts from 5 to 10 years and development 1 to 5 years. Production involves the processes for getting the oil out of the ground. At this stage, operators must consider how to manage the field and how to deliver the crude from the offshore site. Much of the production activities include maintenance and logistics activities. The goal during production is efficient recovery of the hydrocarbons. At this stage, the project starts generating cash flow to pay past capital spending and support further development. It is also the stage at which the host government begins to earn a share of the production profit and a percentage of royalties depending on the production sharing contract. Under a production sharing contract or PSC regime, generally the government retains the title to the oil and gas resources, but rights are granted to share production or profit oil to the oil and gas company. The charging of royalties is generally based on production of the value of the oil and gas produced. Production volume will depend on various factors, including the number of producing wells and the capacity of the installed production facilities. As the longest phase of an oil and gas project, this can extend over a couple of decades, provided that there are sufficient reserves and production is well managed. Typically, production involves 4 phases. The first phase, the startup phase, is where production starts and is generally increased as more production wells are drilled into the reservoir. The second phase, the peak or plateau phase, is where old wells may begin decreasing, although new wells are started. In this phase, the production facilities are working in a fully developed manner with a consistent production rate. The third phase, or the decline phase, this is where production of every well starts declining. Finally, the fourth phase, or the divestment or decommissioning phase, is where production from the wells drop to a point where they are no longer economical. At this point, the wells are plugged and the field is abandoned. Offshore facilities are decommissioned at the end of the field life. Capping the well involves decommissioning in an environmentally secure manner. To do this properly requires further environmental and economic assessments. Costs also start to build up temporarily again. Do you recall what an FPSO is? An FPSO stands for Floating Production Storage and Offloading Unit. Offloading is a key part of the production process. An FPSO is a floating unit used to produce, process, and store petroleum until it is offloaded and transferred to a tanker for transporting. FPSOs are the preferred production facilities for remote, deep offshore developments, and they can be converted from former supertankers or can be purpose-built. Here are the main parts and facilities of an FPSO. Processing and power generation facilities work to store oil and gas and use oil to power the FPSO itself, so the vessel self-generates its energy source. For offloading, the export line transfers crude to the shuttle tanker for transportation to shore-based facilities. The turret and mooring system keep the FPSO stable and in a fixed location. In this diagram, we see the different support vessels involved in offloading oil to a tanker. The tanker is a specialized vessel that moves large quantities of oil from the point of extraction to shore-based refineries for further processing. Smaller vessels, such as tugboats and handling vessels, manage the hose between the FPSO and the tanker and help to monitor the operation. Not until the first marketable oil gets to market will any of the operators begin to see a return on their investment. Until this time, operators are only investing. With the sales of the oil, they will begin to pay down on their capital investment of over $4 billion. At this time, the government of Guyana will also start to receive revenues in the form of royalties and profits, according to the production sharing agreement. In the production sharing agreement, royalties equate to 2% of the total production and the government share of profits is 50%. The royalties are a percentage of the gross revenue. Specifically, gross revenue equates to the price of the oil times the number of barrels that are produced. Profits equal to gross revenues minus costs. Of these profits, the government will have a 50% share. Production activities can span up to a few decades. Production services and activities include information communication technology, operations, maintenance, and logistics. Local opportunities include fabrication, engineering, logistics, maintenance, security, catering, and transport onshore and offshore. However, many of the prime contractors to the oil operators will still require routine non-specialized services such as waste management. Many people ask if all of the oil is removed from a well at this point. The answer is it depends. Operators will only continue production at a well as long as it is profitable to do so. Once reservoirs start to dwindle to volumes that are no longer economically viable, production is scaled down, facilities are decommissioned, and the well is safely plowed. This brings us to the end of the project life cycle of an offshore oil and gas project. Through sections 2, 3, and 4, you have an understanding of the key phases of an offshore oil and gas project and all the activities involved at each stage. In this section, we have covered the offshore project life cycle in the production phase and it being the longest phase in the offshore project life cycle. Production activities, which include maintenance and logistics. The 4 phases of production, which are startup, peak or plateau, decline, and decommissioning or divestment. We have also examined how cash is generated at this phase and the share and percentage of production profit under the production sharing contract. What capping a well involves and the main parts and usage of an FPSO.
Now that course participants have a better understanding of the offshore project phases, a lot of people may be thinking, where do local content opportunities typically begin to occur?
Local content opportunities are likely to occur during the development phase and in indirect services across project phases. During development, activities and investments surge to prepare for production. Within each of the project phases, indirect support services to prime contractors present the most viable local business opportunities.
So Natasha, How do local content opportunities differ during the production phase compared to other phases? What are these opportunities?
In the production phase, there are a few long-term opportunities. This is different compared to development, when opportunities grow, an exploration phase which demands a few highly specialized services. Business opportunities throughout the production phase involve long-term services as needed for operations and routine maintenance. Such services can include scaffolding, surface treatments, logistics, etc. These services are not constantly required and demand can fluctuate.
Lastly, Natasha, here is a question that many are curious about. At what stage do oil and gas companies begin to see the return on their investment?
This occurs during the production stage. Recall that up until production, international companies are making investments in exploration and developing the project. The host government also begins to earn a share of the production profit and a percentage of royalties, depending on the production share and contract. It is anticipated that production will begin in 2020 for Guyana's first offshore project, Liza 1. Remember that you can review this section at any time, and if you have any additional questions, please post them to the course forum where a CLBD staff can address your question. You can also visit our website at clbdguyana.com to sign up on the supplier registration portal and find updates on our course offerings. In the next section, Section 5, we will look at the challenges of operating in the offshore environment in greater technical detail. I'm Natasha, and I'll see you in my next class as we continue to explore the offshore oil and gas industry.